I would like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Hillary Clayton. Dr. Clayton was appointed as the first incumbent of the Mary Ann McPhail Equine Performance Center at Michigan State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Hillary Clayton.
Now, something else we can use is gradients. And gradients have all kinds of options. You can go uphill or downhill. You can do a steep gradient or a gradual gradient. You can go at a walk or a trot or a canter. So how do you know what to do? Well, both uphill and downhill can be useful, but for different purposes. Uphill, you'll be more developing propulsion. Downhill is better for developing carrying, self-carriage. Gradual hills you can use to develop cardiovascular fitness. I like to use a slightly steeper hill for developing strength. As far as speed and gait are concerned, on the uphill slope, it has been suggested that the trot, because of that rolling motion of the haunches, trotting up anything more than a gradual hill might be a cause of sacroiliac problems. Now, I don't know that that's ever been proven, but just in case, I tend to stay away from the trot on the uphill. So mostly I would use the walk and the canter on the uphill grade. Now, coming down the hill, on a very gradual slope, I think it's good to use all of the gaits, at least to a certain extent, because it's really good for improving balance, especially, I think, in the canter. But when you get beyond a very gradual slope, you have to be aware that there is more concussion on the legs when the horse is going downhill. So on anything other than the most gradual downhill slope, I would always walk down. And going down the slope here, I think the horse was straight and the photographer's a little bit crooked here. But anyway, as we said, steeper slopes at the walk only because of the increase in concussion. But a fairly gradual downhill slope is really great for training some of the collected movements and for getting the haunches underneath the horse. And it's absolutely essential that the horse carries himself. You are not responsible for carrying him down the hill. Yes?
I read early on in my research to go at angles rather than straight up and down, and to vary the angle because of what the strain. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, you can certainly go at angles, and some people advocate that when the hill is quite steep, that if you take an angle, then you're not going so steeply downhill. The thing you have to watch with going at an angle is that you are loading the joints, especially the lower joints in the legs, at that angle. So it's something else that if you're going to do it, introduce it gradually, build it up gradually, and don't do too much at an angle either. But I don't mind riding at an angle across the hills. Halts are great on downhill gradients. And again, the horse has to carry himself. It's a collecting exercise. Rainback is good. Start it on a very gradual hill. This hill is a little steeper than I would start the Rainback, but this particular horse is one who's reached the stage of training that he has to start to learn to bend his haunches. And I put these pictures up not because this is a great Rainback, but to show you the difference in the angles of the joints in the hind leg when he's just walking down the hill in the picture on the left versus when he's reining back in the central picture. Right? You can see how much more he's actually bending those joints and starting to sit. And then if you can take this position and carry it into the forward movement, the same as you would if you were just schooling in the arena, the better it is. And here's another version on, this is not riding across the hill, this is actually leg yielding down the hill. So you can leg yield up or down a gradual hill. But again, remember, start with just a little bit, build up very gradually, and never try to do a whole lot of this type of work where the joints are being loaded asymmetrically. rails and gymnastics can also be used for strength training. In this case, I prefer raised rails because I think these are more suited to teach the horse to push up off the ground. And that's what we really want to do with this in a strength training context, is train the propulsive muscles that are going to push the horse upwards. If you want to develop a big, fancy extension, you have to train the horse to push up, not just forward. Because by taking off with more upward propulsion, he'll stay airborne longer and then cover more ground while he's airborne. It's the same thing when you teach a horse to jump over a water jump. You don't want him just launching himself forward. You want him pushing upwards over the water. And trainers will sometimes use a pole over the middle of the water to teach that. Right? They'll go further if they jump up rather than just forward. Jumping again can be useful, but again, if the horse jumps in good form, it can be a way to help to develop propulsive power, especially, I would say, at the lower and medium levels of training.
How many repetitions of camel riding work?
Start off with just a couple, and then build it up. You know, you can add one rep one more time through, let's say, every week. And you can go from just doing it once, then you might go to doing the whole thing twice with a longer break in between times. How many total? I think these are, we're just using these as tools. So we're not looking at building up to the maximum number of reps that we possibly can. We're looking at just building up to a reasonable number that will help us to achieve the goal of making the horse fitter. So if I was using a row of rails like this, and let's say there were 5 rails, then I might want to work up to being able to do it 5 times together, then go away, do something else for a while, come back, do it 5 more times, maybe 3 5-rep sets, if you like. And I'm not saying you can't do more than that. If you have a reason for doing more, if you're, teaching some skill in doing that, then that's fine, do more. But just, the point that the goal is not to do the maximum possible. The goal is to do enough to achieve what you want to achieve. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. What about weight training? Well, here's a horse wearing a weight vest. This can be used as a general training technique. It's a technique that I think you can sometimes use to help strengthen the thoracic sling muscles or encourage the horse to engage those sling muscles which are elevating the forehand. It's a technique that can also be used for cardiovascular conditioning. That's funny. I have something on my screen that's not on your screen. Well, Anyway, it says down here, loads, flexor tendons, and suspensories. This will put, the more weight you put on the horse, the more you will load the soft tissues. So, there's 2 ways to look at it. One way is that, well, we don't want to overload those tissues, so working the horse with extra weight is maybe not advisable. But on the other hand, if you've got a horse who has had a ligament or tendon injury and you're bringing him back into work, then maybe this would be a useful technique to use before you actually get on the horse, so that you could increase the weight more gradually rather than going from just a saddle to plunking the whole rider on the horse. I see a question.
Again, talking about older horses, 2 scenarios. One's been in Precinct George work all year. He's very fit and he's sound. And the other one is also sound but has been turned out and is coming back into work. And they're 22. So I don't know how, do you work them 5 days a week? Do you start?
Sure.
I mean, you talked about the tendon. How much work can I do with these older guys to keep them fit? But
if you are hoping to show Precinct George, you have to keep this horse fit. You have to keep him strong. You don't have an alternative. You can't do FEI level work unless the horse has sufficient muscular strength for the collection and the self-carriage. Okay. So if you only need to develop that or maintain that fitness, then yeah, you only need to school him 3 days a week or do this kind of training 3 days a week, and the other days you could hack out in the country, turn him out. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes?
What do you think about that kind of a weighted system on your previous slide for a horse that's built with a bit of a dip in his back?
What do I think about this type of weighting for a horse that's built with a bit of a dip in his back? I have better training systems for horses with a dip in the back. Let me just finish. I know we're getting a little close on time. Let me just finish what I was going to say, and then maybe we can go outside and do questions or something. Okay, so you can put heavy shoes or weighted bell boots on to encourage or to strengthen the muscles that elevate the leg. Now, I know there are people who don't like the idea of doing that, and that's fine. I'm not saying you should do it, but if you have a horse that's maybe not very expressive in the piaffe, say, this is a way to strengthen the muscles that lift the leg. I would not use extra weights in the medium and extended gaits because the horse can lose control. And my final thing was I was going to say a word about core strengthening. This is, again, something I'm going to talk about tomorrow with Betsy, but I know a lot of people are going home tonight, maybe. So if you're going home tonight, I'll show you the new book we've got out on this. This book is so new, I only picked it up on Tuesday from the printer, but it's called Activate Your Horse's Core. And it's a series of unmounted exercises for promoting mobility of the horse's core, for strengthening the muscles, and improving balance, particularly in the muscles that support the pelvis, so that, for instance, in the pirouettes, when the horse is standing on one leg, he doesn't do this. And that's a more common problem than you would think. So exercises to stabilize the pelvic muscles that keep the leg aligned with the pelvis. I have that book for sale right here and now, and that's why I was telling you, because nobody else has it yet. And I'm sure USDF Bookshop will get it, sometime soon. But anyway, yes. There's never enough time, is there?